before we get started, I wanted to first thank our sponsors. So first, Schmidt Marine Technology Partners generously sponsored us for tonight and for our future cohorts. I know Erica and Mark are here tonight, so thank you guys so much. We really appreciate your support. And as you'll hear today, getting the support for building this community and building this broader ecosystem is really important. And Frost Science has also been super generous in lending us this space, which is incredible. And again, super on theme. So thank you guys again for having us. So second try, no technical issues this time. We are a startup community and venture studio empowering current and aspiring entrepreneurs in regenerative ocean and climate impact. And when we launched September of last year, again, we really started out with this focus on making this field accessible through virtual panel events. And where that led once things got back to being in person was honestly kind of this reality shock. My first in-person event for Seaworthy was sitting down with Mayor Suarez for a cafecito talk. Yeah, and then literally a month later, I was on stage pitching at the Wincubator. We got to host our first in-person event on the beach in Key Biscayne with our friends Paddle, who are incredible hosts. We had our event with Commotion Miami back in June. We got to have Ana Paula Gonzalez speak to our startups. We got to launch our startups back in July. And then arguably the most exciting launch of our cohort was our marketing director, Ben, had baby Millie pictured there. So it has been an eventful couple months to say the least. And congrats again, Ben, who I know is virtually. And so speaking of our team, I would be remiss to give, now that we have some virtually with us as well, the full shout outs to all the team. So again, feel free to wave your hand, make sure everybody gets to see you. So first off, Stephanie Wright, again, who is co-leading the nonprofit with me. Thanks again, Steph. Sierra Phillips, who's not only our global outreach director, but also running technical tonight. Thank you, Sierra. If you can maybe show Alexandra in the top right, the video for Alexandra. Alexandra is joining us virtually. She is our operations director. She has been with me with so many of our startups, helping them connect with all of our resources. Thank you to Alexandra. And then Rachel Small, who just became our new community relations director. And then Ben Hone as well, who's also virtually our marketing director all the way in New York. And last but not least, Angela Betancourt, who's our PR director locally here to Miami. Yeah. And just to really quick recap this team, I know a couple of people here you think are in person, but actually, other than Angela, all of this started virtually. Stephanie, you'll hear her whole story, but she was halfway across the world when we got to connect. Sierra was halfway across, or all the way across the country. And really building a team virtually in a pandemic was, I never imagined how effective it would be. And really, I think it's just created such an incredible model for startups moving forward. But beyond the team, we've also had some incredible advisors as well, some of which are with us tonight. I know Carolyn Gruby's there with us virtually. Thank you, Carolyn. Andrew Corey is here with us from Regenerative Summit, who I know is going to hopefully be hosting their event here later this month. There's Andrew. Christina Thurkel, see you over there. And I'm sure virtually Salar, Anisha, and Eric as well. And then on our professional advisor side, Melissa Krinsman, I saw you were here as well, and Ann Carpenter. Thank you all so much for helping us get to this point. All right, with that, here's the full story, if you haven't heard it, on where this all began. And I'll try not to get too deep into the weeds. But for me, my journey into BlueTech, ocean technology, actually started back in 2012 when James Cameron did the dive to the Marianas Trench. I was actually a freshman at the University of Florida, go Gators. And I was an aspiring mechanical engineer, and looking around, and all of my friends were looking off to go into SpaceX, while I got inspired by James Cameron going all the way the other direction, which at the time, more people had been to the moon than to the deepest part of our ocean. And so that really inspired me to do innovation and technology for ocean science and exploration. And so I really was just gung-ho on following that path. Problem was, ocean engineering is a very rare program, and University of Florida didn't have that. And so for me, I really started actually a parallel path of getting a background in design and systems thinking as a University Innovation Fellow, and then finally getting an internship at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution doing underwater vehicle design and hydrodynamic simulation work. After I graduated, I became a pilot and test engineer for underwater vehicles up at Bluefin Robotics in Boston. And 6 months into working there, they got bought out by a defense contractor called General Dynamics. And for me, immediately I saw the divergent path of following my passion go away and still having to deal with winter as a native South Floridian, and I knew I couldn't do both. So I moved to San Diego, where I spent the last 3 years as a contractor for the Navy, and seeing folks from the Scripps Institution of Oceanography that I aspired to work with one day in and out of my lab on a regular basis. And so it really stuck with me how deeply intertwined these interests were in defense as well as fossil fuels in the ocean innovation space, and that me as someone who wanted to do innovation and technology for actually doing real impact for this planet was siloed to serving these interests. And so I came back to South Florida, where I'm originally from, to get my master's here at University of Miami in ocean exploration science, and more importantly, have the opportunity to launch Seaworthy, which we launched a year and a month ago. And so some of the key takeaways that I had from my time in industry, again, started back at Woods Hole. I saw firsthand how minimal public funding was for the ocean sciences, and as a result of that, how the private sector was really monopolized by these interests in defense and fossil fuels. But even in the last year at the University of Miami, I've also seen these social constructs where people think that in order to be in this space, you need a PhD or marine science degree, or if you're already in academia, you don't really think outside of the tunnel vision of public sector and academia. And so all of these disconnects really, again, undermine the ability for people to do the impactful work of actually solving the big problems of our time, from overfishing, plastic pollution, climate change, and sea level rise. And so we set out to say, how can we create a pathway for people to do innovation and entrepreneurship to actually take on these big problems and do what they're really passionate about? Oh, other way here. Sorry. There we go. So the opportunity that we saw here in South Florida was the fact that our blue economy, our ocean economy, is actually built differently. We're the one corner of the country where these entrenched interests in defense and fossil fuels don't have a footing. So on one hand, that means we have an incredible opportunity for building this blue economy right, not having to serve these corruptive influences. On the other hand, that means our ecosystem is severely underdeveloped compared to these other areas of the country that have access to those dollars. And so really, when we got down to it, we saw this opportunity not only to develop this blue economy for the right reasons, but to develop a regenerative blue economy. And for those who don't know, regeneration is going beyond sustainability to actually solve problems and not just mitigate them. Net zero is the bare minimum of what we should be aspiring for. If we fall short of that, we're still worse than we were before. If we're actually solving these problems and healing the planet, that means going above and beyond where nature has that ability to actually recover and continue recovering. And so we launched Seaworthy Collective again in September of last year as the first BlueTech startup community and venture studio in the US, really working to make this field accessible and start to actually open up innovation for ocean science and exploration. And so what Venture Studio is, if you're not familiar, is primarily known for co-creating startups. And that's where we started. We said, how can we build interdisciplinary teams to actually take on these problems and be really intentional about the problems we want to solve? At the same time, as we built up our network of over 100 mentors and collaborators, we realized we could leverage that network to also help existing startups. And so we said, why not both? And so that's where I think things really started with our venture studio, focusing again on these regenerative ocean and climate impact startups. And for those who don't know, the ocean is our greatest opportunity for solving climate change, global warming, making up 71% of the planet. And so I'm going to take you guys down a little deep dive of some of the methodology. Hopefully a couple of you guys may have heard of design thinking. If you haven't, going to give you a light version of it. Basically, design thinking, again, this is going back to some of my roots, is about basically how this is primarily for product development, right? It's how do you develop an idea? And so it's empathizing with the problems and all of the potential areas you can address, then defining the actual problem you want to solve, ideating all of the potential solutions, and then prototyping to determine what solutions you should really be going for. And then finally, testing. And so the whole notion of this is to say you flare and focus, right? Look for all the possibilities and then focus in on the specific things that actually are going to help you get to where you're trying to go. And so when we apply this to Venture Studio, this is really what we discovered with this cohort, and something that I actually think is really groundbreaking. Incubators and accelerators are very focused. They're very single vertical, single stage. And as you'll hear from our cohort today, we're crossing 4 or 5 different verticals, depending on how you categorize some. And at the same time, crossing different stages of startups, where some are literally 3 months from inception, and some are already looking to scale. And the whole point is that really what this embodies is actually how these solutions are meant to exist. These are about building regenerative systems, right? None of these are meant to exist in silos. These are meant to feed off of each other to create not only systems of solutions that heal the planet, but really systems that build local scale economies. And so when people get overwhelmed by the sheer size of the problem that people are trying to solve, the real goal here is to say it takes a lot of small scale efforts to build an overall broad scale impact. And so we have 6 different verticals that we call our opportunities for sea change that individually have great potential for impact, but as collective systems really magnify that potential. So when you pair something like an aquaculture fish farm or sea cucumber farm, like our friends at Panacea, with a seaweed farm like Key Farms, that sea cucumbers actually eat seaweed, and seaweed can help sequester carbon dioxide, all of a sudden you're starting to actually build these mutually beneficial systems, right? Where they're creating business for each other and actually amplifying their impact. And then you compare that with something like a coastal resilient mangrove forest or reef regeneration project to close that system and actually make, again, coastal resilience happen. And then beyond that, monitor that system with a sensor network that could be powered by ocean energy, and even have a plastic pollution detection and removal business to keep that ecosystem and those products pristine. So this is just one example of how all of these different verticals actually work together, and we really build on the interplay of verticals instead of one-offs. And so overall, our goal with our cohort was to catalyze traction, collaboration by providing access to our network of over 100 mentors and collaborators, the talent of our community, which actually is now over 1,200, and capital, which we have investing partners and continue to recruit investing partners to join our network and be accessible to these startups, because this capital is very much the magnet to so much talent. And also really showing that the oceans is not just a charity case, but actually a business opportunity. So altogether, when we launched our cohort back in July, we had 10 different startups, including 2 that we co-created across verticals, including carbon dioxide removal for reversing climate change, to creating data for actually tracking ESG and impact, to doing aquaculture and also coastal resilience from 3D printing seawalls, and even doing AI for different applications and for like natural disasters or aquaculture. So you'll get to hear from all of them. I don't want to butcher their elevator pitches. They do a lot better job than I do, but I would love to go over what we accomplished. And this is really, to me, our proof in the pudding. We were able to accomplish 84% of all of the 3-month KPIs that we established at the beginning of the cohort. We're really proud of that. And as you'll see, that ranged from helping create pilot projects, bringing on operators, creating partnerships between these startups, helping them get grant funding, investment, and build new collaborative relationships, numbering over 151. And I actually think some of our startups were a little lazy on updating their tracking sheets. So I think it was more than that. All that being said, I'd love to bring up Stephanie Wright, who is our co-executive director on the nonprofit, to talk about now what we have coming next. Stephanie?
Thank you, Daniel. So Daniel has mentioned the systemic barriers we're addressing in ocean innovation, but the future of Seaworthy Collective focuses on the individuals capable of affecting that change. The future of Seaworthy includes all of us, all of our struggles to make an actual impact in conservation, all of our frustrations in trying to understand the problems and needs in the ocean space, that the collective systems of industry, media, and academia have failed in educating us. Last year, for 5 months, I found myself sitting on a cruise ship halfway across the world in Singapore, where I'd been working, and I tasked myself with finding the information, the resources, the community to make a difference in this world, to make a difference on our oceans. I had a bachelor's degree in theater and philosophy, and I had 4 years of cruise ship experience that made me empathetic to coastal communities and the plights that they face, but even more so, passionate to help those so adversely affected by our misuses. My searching, however, only left me more frustrated, because once you start digging, you begin to realize how well documented and far-reaching the problems really are, but you don't see solutions. You don't see how passionate and driven communities can address the problems directly affecting their future. The communities historically left out of the discourse are the ones most affected. They're not given the resources to help themselves, let alone provided help from the systems in place that are meant to address them. So what are they meant to do? I lived 5 months on this ship at sea with an abundant amount of time, and the only opportunity that I could find for myself was to put myself in a little bit more debt and go back to grad school and get my master's. Thank you. But this cannot be the only opportunity for saving our seas, for saving our communities, and especially for saving ourselves. The future of conservation and ocean regeneration has to be inclusive, not only because it is the right thing to do, which it is, but because it will take all of the voices, coastal or not, all of the talent, BlueTech or not, to build equitable opportunities that do not currently exist. I know this because my story is emblematic of what can be accomplished when you bring passionate people to the table. Passionate people show up. We use our resources, we are resourceful, and we use our experiences to help drive solutions for the future because we have to. The Seaworthy Foundation is this future. And you can hit next. This is our nonprofit that will build and educate our community by leading ocean innovation and accessibility, inclusivity, and interdisciplinarity. You may know of our panel of events, the Sea Changemaker series, in which we are leading ocean innovation and accessibility and inclusivity and interdisciplinarity. Our network of mentors and collaborators across a multitude of industries use their experiences and ideas to educate our community. That transmission of knowledge is vital. But more excitingly, next year we are piloting a program that speaks directly to the area in which I am most passionate. The Seaworthy Fellowship is our intentional and driven effort to make entrepreneurship and ocean education more diverse. We are providing not only opportunities for Black and Brown communities, but access into the industry. This is exactly what I was looking for last year. It's not just about my vision or Daniel's. All of us are a piece of the story. Every panel attendee, every mentor, every donor and partner, each of us are a part of Seaworthy Foundation's mission to bring resources, inspiration, information, opportunities, and community to go at this together. We're opening the floodgates to build this even better with the collective effort of our community moving forward. With your help, we can turn the tide and solve the ocean's greatest problems together. Thank you.
That was awesome. So I just love the role model that Steph is, as, again, the fact that if anyone with a passion can actually make a difference in this space, this is the opportunity to do it. And so to really finalize the vision moving forward, you know, we've had this nonprofit in the past, but we didn't have a standalone, and we didn't have a really solid vision. And Steph really helped bring that, and we're so excited for her to lead that moving forward. And so altogether, what we're able to accomplish as this hybrid triple bottom line of social impact, economic impact, and all of that leading to ocean and climate impact is, again, making this field accessible, activating the potential of a community so that then we can actually really work to solve these problems. Because until we solve these barriers, we're never going to actually get to implement the solutions to solve these problems. And so overall, everything starts with our community. That's why we're all here. We have our opportunities for Sea Change that actually allow people to co-create and crowdsource startups with us. We have our venture studio to give them access to all of these resources to help them grow, whether they're a co-created startup or existing. And finally, we have tonight our pitch showcase to demonstrate all of these startups' amazing progress and really show the pipeline that's getting built here in South Florida and beyond. And so I'm happy to announce next year we'll be launching our second cohort in March, and we have our applications open now. And our last big ask before we start bringing our startups up here, we are announcing officially our hybrid seed round. So we are raising $1 million, whether it's philanthropic fundraising or impact investment. The whole point is we need to prove that this ecosystem wants this to stay, and we see every reason to, just by having all of your support tonight, and more importantly, enabling us to really build what we've had here. The one thing that you guys didn't hear tonight is the fact that this whole team is all volunteer. No one has done this full time. Think about that, right? Just imagine if people were actually on this full time, we had the dedicated expertise that actually could run this program 10 times better than I could, and could actually really help us to scale this and grow this so that we can double our annual venture studio cohorts, refine our model so that we can even scale to additional cities, launch these social impact programs that Stephanie mentioned, and even build our own fund to start supporting the startups ourselves and co-invest with our investing partners. And so you can see our audacious goal is to grow and develop over 3,000 co-created and crowdsourced regenerative ocean and climate impact ventures by the end of 2030. And we can only do that with the help and support of our community and the catalysts that help us grow. So we look forward to you guys helping get this out there, and look forward to really delivering so much more in the future. Thank you. And so we'll have this up later as well. You don't have to scan it all now, but we do have QR codes with all of the information for our startups, for contacting us. Our team who's all around has them. So feel free. Again, we have all these different ways to join us, follow us, and get back to us if you are looking to connect with us. With that, thank you all so much, and let's get this thing started.